At 9:12, my badge struck the reader outside the glass boardroom, and the light blinked red. I tried again. Same hard little chirp. Grant stood behind me with one hand in his pocket. My cousin had chosen his navy suit, the expensive one that made him look broader through the shoulders. "You're done here," he said. The Oriole Health delegation was coming through reception. 6 people in dark coats, rolling bags, whispering over the tile. Grant took the presentation binder from under my arm, then held out his hand for my laptop. Security Officer Dale Cooper watched from beside the locked door. I gave Grant the laptop. I said nothing. A red plastic cart seal in my jacket pocket pressed its ridged edge into my palm, while the client delegation passed close enough to smell the coffee I had ordered for them. Grant opened the boardroom at 9:13 and left me standing outside it. At 9:19, through the glass, I watched Oriole's chairwoman scan the room. Celia Rowan set down her coffee. "Where is Leah Mercer?" Grant's smile survived, but only from the mouth down. He said something I couldn't hear. Celia looked past him and saw me beside Dale. She pointed at the door. Grant came out with his jaw set. "The client would like you to join us." "My badge doesn't work." "I'm aware of that." Dale shifted his weight. He was built like a refrigerator but had the apologetic eyebrows of a basset hound. He had been our security officer for 9 years. I had brought him soup when he had his gallbladder removed, and now he was studying the carpet like it contained instructions. "Visitor protocol," Grant said to him. Dale reached for the sign-in tablet. "You just watched me leave this room," I said. "I know, Leah." "Visitor protocol," Grant repeated. So I signed my name, selected Mercer Textile Services from the drop-down list, and accepted a white adhesive badge that said Leah Mercer, guest. Dale stuck it over the embroidered company logo on my blouse because my hands had started shaking. Inside the boardroom, the coffee service sat beneath a framed photograph of our original plant. My father and Grant's father beside 2 used washers, both men young enough to believe exhaustion was a business model. The Oriole executives had opened their folders. My name appeared on the top page under Transition Lead. Celia waited until I took the only empty chair. She was a compact woman with silver hair cut straight at her jaw. During 6 months of planning meetings, I had never seen her raise her voice. She could make silence feel like a hand placed flat on a table. "We were told there was a staffing change," she said. Grant sat at the head of the table. "An internal personnel matter. The transition plan remains fully supported." Celia kept looking at me. "Are you still employed here?" "As of 7 minutes ago, I don't believe so." The infection control director, Dr. Nisha Patel, stopped uncapping her pen. Grant folded his hands. "Leah, this is precisely why I suggested we handle this separately." "You didn't suggest it. You canceled my badge because you refused a direct instruction." Celia glanced at the glass wall. Anyone walking through the administrative wing could see us. 2 payroll clerks had already found reasons to pass by. "What instruction?" she asked. Grant leaned forward. "We have a full agenda. I'm happy to provide written confirmation that Mercer has the staffing and capacity to execute every obligation in the proposed agreement." "That wasn't my question," Celia said. Grant was good at rooms. That was one of the things people missed when they decided he was only a family company prince with bright teeth and tailored suits. He could remember the name of a facilities director's dog after hearing it once. He knew when to joke, when to lower his voice, and when to leave a silence open for someone else to fill with a concession. He had convinced 3 hospital systems to stay with us after a steam line failure shut down half our finishing floor. He also knew Celia well enough to stop trying to redirect her. He looked at me. "Go ahead." I placed both hands on the table. Grant instructed me to present the Oriole pilot as fully validated. "And you disagree?" Celia asked. "I disagree with the word fully." Grant exhaled through his nose. "We had a staging variance on 3 carts. No product integrity issue was identified." Nisha turned to me. "Which 3 carts?" "I don't have the numbers in front of me." "Because they're on the laptop you surrendered," Grant said. "This is turning into theater." The seal in my pocket cut into my palm again. I took it out and set it beside my visitor badge. Red plastic, 4 inches long, serial number stamped in black. OHA-041738. Nisha's eyes went to it. This was on cart 17, I said. The receiving scan shows it leaving our sanitized side at 8:04 Tuesday evening. Oriole received it at 7:26 Wednesday morning. The electronic route history shows no exceptions. Because there were no exceptions, Grant said. The washroom scale recorded cart 17 at 6:11 Wednesday morning. A man from Oriole Finance frowned. At your plant? Yes. That's after the system says it left, Nisha said. Yes. Grant's fingers tightened around his pen. We identified a scanner synchronization problem after I found the way ticket. We identified it during review. I looked at Celia. The seal number was scanned onto one cart, removed, then applied to another cart after a maintenance delay. The second cart sat beside an open bay in 91% humidity. It may still have been safe. The point of validation is that we don't replace may with did, because the contract needs to be signed on Tuesday. The room was quiet except for the tunnel washers below us. Even through 2 floors of concrete, their extraction cycle made the water glasses tremble. Grant tapped his pen once. We changed the staging procedure. The maintenance bay now has a physical barrier. Dispatch supervisors have been retrained. All corrective actions are in the packet. I wrote the corrective actions, I said. They need to be tested under a full volume run. We ran full volume Friday. 82%. 94. Only if you include rewash. His face changed then. Not much. Grant had learned control from men who considered anger a failure of negotiation, but the skin beside his right eye pulled tight. Celia noticed. She noticed everything. She turned to the vice president of facilities beside her. Martin, what volume was the validation model based on? 96,000 pounds over 24 hours. We processed 90,000, Grant said. 79,000 cleared quality on the first pass, I said, which exceeds launch week demand. Not Tuesday demand. Tuesday demand can be balanced across Monday night. Not if the floor census runs above the baseline Oriole gave us in March. Grant pushed his chair back half an inch. Leah built the model using the most conservative possible assumptions. That has value. It also has a cost. If every variable has to be perfect before we proceed, we will never proceed. That was his best argument because it was true. Mercer had lost 2 regional contracts in 18 months, one to a national processor that bid below what we paid for natural gas. The new finishing line was already on order. Steel supports had been installed in the East Bay, and the bank's first draw had paid for equipment sitting in crates in Ohio. Oriole's volume would spread our fixed costs and keep 93 people working through winter. I knew the payroll numbers. I knew Elena Ruiz's husband had been laid off from the paper mill. I knew Marcus Bell had turned down a route job closer to home because I told him Mercer's expansion would open a dispatch supervisor position. Grant knew I knew. He softened his voice. You've spent 6 months making this transition work. Nobody doubts your commitment, but at some point, professional judgment means accepting that controlled risk still contains risk. My father had made the same argument the night before at his kitchen table. Sam Mercer was officially retired, which meant he arrived at the plant before dawn twice a week and criticized our boiler logs for free. He had listened while I explained the cart discrepancy, then wiped a ring of coffee from the table with his thumb. Can they correct it? He had asked. Yes. Did they? They changed the procedure. They haven't validated the change at Tuesday volume. Grant says they did a full run. Grant is counting rewash as completed product. Dad had looked tired. Not old. He hated when anyone called him old, but worn at the edges, like one of the canvas sling bags we kept repairing instead of replacing. Your uncle signed personally on part of that equipment note, he said. Richard hasn't told Grant. I stared at him. Why are you telling me? Because numbers don't stop being real when they're inconvenient. That applies to cart records, too. I know. But he had kept looking at his coffee. Now, in the boardroom, Celia closed the transition folder. "What exactly were you asked to say today?" she asked me. Grant answered first. She was asked to present the approved deck. Celia's eyes stayed on mine. "The final slide says, 'All validation criteria met,'" I said. "I asked to change it to 'corrective validation pending.'" Grant refused. "Because the correction is operational, not contractual," Grant said. Nisha leaned back. "Sterile root integrity is contractual. We're discussing clean linen, not sterile instruments. We're discussing barrier controls represented in your own proposal." Grant gave her a patient nod, the kind that made people feel he was waiting for them to catch up. And the barrier controls functioned. The delay occurred after processing. "Beside an open maintenance bay," she said. "The cart was sealed." "With a seal that had been moved," I said. He looked at me. "You've made that point." Celia picked up the red seal. She turned it over between her fingers. On the underside, near the locking head, was a pale crescent where the plastic had been pinched incorrectly. "What am I looking at?" she asked. "A hand crimper leaves a full circle when it closes properly. That crescent means someone squeezed it just enough to catch, then reopened it with a pick." "You can tell that from the mark?" "My father taught me." Grant gave a short laugh. "When we were using a different seal supplier 20 years ago. It's hardly forensic evidence." "No," I said. "That's why I checked the scan, weigh ticket, wash chemistry record, and maintenance log. And after you raised the issue, we corrected it." "You corrected the door. What else did you expect me to correct?" "The pressure that made somebody move the seal." For the first time, he looked hurt. It would have been easier if Grant had been a bully all the time. He wasn't. He had slept on a folding cot at the plant during the steam line failure. He had personally driven a rental truck through an ice storm when St. Vincent's maternity ward ran short of sheets. When an employee's apartment burned, Grant found him a furnished place before the insurance adjuster returned the call. He believed people mattered. He also believed he was the person who had to decide how much. "You think I asked someone to fake a cart record?" he said. "I think you told dispatch this contract could not slip." "That isn't the same thing." "It was to whoever moved the seal." Celia set it down. "We're postponing execution," she said. The man from finance whispered her name, but she lifted one finger. 10 business days. Mercer will repeat the validation at modeled Tuesday volume with Oriole observers present. We'll reconcile machine output, chemistry, weigh tickets, seal scans, and receiving records. If the controls perform, we proceed." Grant recovered quickly. "That's a reasonable solution. Leah will coordinate the test." "No," he said. The word came too fast. Celia tilted her head. Grant adjusted his cuff. "Leah is no longer an employee. I can assign our quality manager." "Elena Ruiz?" Nisha asked. "Yes." "Ms. Ruiz is qualified," Celia said. "Leah designed the transition. We would like her included. There are confidentiality and access issues." "I'm sure your counsel can solve them." Grant smiled again. It was a smaller smile now. "We'll review the request." The meeting ended 20 minutes later with most of the coffee untouched. Dale was waiting outside. He had a cardboard file box in his arms. Grant walked the delegation to reception, warm and polished, already discussing possible dates for the observed run. Celia paused beside me. "Do you have someplace to go?" she asked quietly. "I have a car." "That wasn't what I meant." I looked through the glass at Grant shaking Martin's hand beneath the old photograph of our fathers. "I know," I said. She gave me her card. "Document today while it's still today." Then she joined the others. Dale handed me the box. My purse, framed certification, spare shoes, a chipped blue mug Elena had given me, and the cardigan I kept for cold meetings. 15 years reduced to things someone else had selected from my office. "My plant keys?" I asked. "Grant has them." "My personal notebook?" He said it might contain company information. "It contains my dentist appointment." Dale's mouth twitched, then flattened. "I'm sorry." Across reception, Grant finished with Celia and waited until the delegation was outside. His smile disappeared. "You embarrassed me in front of a $28 million client," he said. "You canceled my badge in front of them. I gave you an opportunity last night. You gave me a script. I gave you a way to protect this company." He reached into my box and picked up the red seal. For a moment, we both held it, one hand on either end. "You don't get to turn every imperfection into a referendum on my character," he said. "And you don't get to call a record complete because the missing part is inconvenient." He released the seal. "Go home, Leah. I'll send the separation documents this afternoon." "And the original qualification report?" "Company property. The client asked for it. The client asked for a successful validation. I intend to give them one." He stepped aside so Dale could escort me out. As the lobby doors opened, I heard the finishing line start below us, steam knocking once through the pipes. My white visitor badge had begun peeling away from my blouse. I pulled it off and folded it around the red seal, sticky, side in. Behind me, Grant was already on the phone calling someone to replace me. My phone rang before I reached the employee parking lot. Dad. I let it ring twice, then answered beside my car. "What happened?" he asked. "You tell me. Grant called you first." He said Oriole postponed. He fired me before they arrived. There was a pause long enough for me to hear his kitchen clock. He said you refused to present. I refused to certify a test that didn't pass. That isn't how he described it. I'm stunned. Don't do that. Do what? Use that tone like I'm on the other side. I looked back at the administrative wing. Grant's office windows faced the plant, not the parking lot. He liked to tell people he kept his attention on production. From where I stood, I could see only the reflection of the white roof and the thin gray morning. "I'm still trying to locate the sides," I said. Dad exhaled. "Come over. I need to write down what happened. Then write it here. I'll come when I'm done." I sat behind the wheel with Celia's card propped against the speedometer and used my phone to record a memo. I gave the time my badge failed, the exact words Grant used, who stood where, what the Oriole team asked, and every number I had cited from memory. When I reached the part where Dale stuck the visitor badge over my company logo, my voice broke. I stopped the recording, stared through the windshield, and started that section again. The separation documents arrived at 1:46 from Valerie Kim, our Human Resources Director. Valerie and I had shared an office wall for 11 years. She knew I took my coffee with too much cream and that Grant called meetings conversations when he had already made the decision. Her email contained one sentence: "Please review the attached materials and direct any questions to outside counsel." The package offered 12 weeks of salary, 3 months of health coverage, and payment for unused vacation. In exchange, I would release Mercer from any claims, return all company information, promise not to disparage management, and confirm that the Oriole pilot issue involved a clerical timing discrepancy that did not affect product quality or contractual readiness. I read that sentence 4 times. Then I emailed Valerie from my personal account. "I cannot confirm a statement I believe is inaccurate. Please preserve all records related to the Oriole pilot, including my qualification report, revisions to the transition deck, seal scans, weigh tickets, wash chemistry exports, maintenance logs, and communications concerning my access termination." Her reply came 9 minutes later. Received. No hello. No Leah. But 9 minutes meant she had been watching. I forwarded the documents to an employment attorney whose name I got from the State Textile Association directory. Her automated response said consultations were scheduling 6 days out. There went the fantasy where a brilliant stranger read one attachment and arrived before dinner with justice in a leather briefcase. At Dad's house, the side door was unlocked. It always was. The kitchen smelled like onions and the mineral oil he rubbed into the cutting boards every Saturday, although it was Tuesday. He had set out 2 bowls of beef stew. "You made lunch," I said. "I reheated lunch. You put parsley on it. It was dying." He slid a bowl toward me. He had removed his Mercer work jacket but still wore the steel-toed boots he claimed were more comfortable than regular shoes. A legal pad sat beside his spoon. "Grant called your uncle," he said. I assumed. Richard's furious. At me? At everyone. He's efficient that way. I ate a piece of potato that had dissolved around the edges. Did Grant tell him he canceled my access while the client was walking in? He said you forced his hand. By showing up for the meeting I was scheduled to lead? Dad rubbed the bridge of his nose. He says you were going to undermine him in the room. I told him last night I would say corrective validation was pending, and he heard that as undermining. Because it was true in front of people he wanted to mislead. Careful. With which word? He lowered his hand. You think I'm asking you to lie. I'm asking you to leave some room for the possibility that Grant believes what he's saying. I believe he believes it. That matters. It doesn't make the slide accurate. He looked at the legal pad. He had written 96,000 at the top, then divided it by 24. Walk me through the run, he said. I did. He challenged every assumption. He asked whether rewash could be released before loading, whether the maintenance delay had occurred during peak soil sort intake, whether the finishing crew had been fully staffed, whether Oriole's Tuesday demand could be flattened by changing pickup windows. For 40 minutes, he was the man who taught me to trace a damaged sheet backward through 10 departments without accusing the last person who touched it. Finally, he drew a square around 79,000. Not enough, he said. No, could be enough with the new line. The new line isn't commissioned. It will be, after launch. He laid down the pen. His silence should have felt like agreement. Instead, it made me angry. You knew, I said. I knew it was tight. You knew he was using rewash. Not until yesterday. And you still told me to present. I told you to help him get through the meeting. That's what presenting would have done. I thought you could qualify the language without setting fire to the table. He locked me outside the room. I know that now. Would you have believed me if Celia hadn't asked for me? His face tightened. That was answer enough. He stood and carried his bowl to the sink, though it was still half full. Your uncle has his home attached to part of that note. You said he signed personally. You didn't say his house. I found out this morning. Does Grant know? Yes. There it was. The human weight Grant had placed on one side of the scale and expected me to pretend wasn't there. Dad turned on the faucet. Richard offered because the bank cut the equipment value after the manufacturer delayed shipping. Grant didn't force him. But Grant sold him the forecast. We all approved the forecast. I didn't. No, you sent a memo saying the volume ramp was aggressive. And then we approved it. He said we the way retired founders did when they wanted authority without a chair at the meeting. My phone buzzed on the table. Elena Ruiz. Can you talk? I let it go dark. Dad noticed. People at the plant? Elena, you need to be cautious about speaking to a friend, about Grant claiming you're interfering. He already claims I took confidential information. Dad turned off the water. He said your personal notebook is missing. It's in my office. Dale put everything else in a box. Then tell Valerie. I did. Good. He wiped his hands. Sign the release except for that statement. Ask them to strike it. They attach the money to the statement. You don't know that. It's in paragraph 7. He looked toward the bowl I had stopped eating. Leah, 12 weeks gives you time. To do what? Find something that isn't tied to all this. He meant Mercer. He meant Grant. He also meant him. For 15 years, every holiday had eventually become a production meeting. Thanksgiving gravy cooled while Grant and I argued about root density. Richard gave plan updates during birthday toasts. When my marriage ended, Dad's first practical comfort had been that I could take more overnight conversions without worrying about anyone waiting at home. Mercer had filled whatever space I left available and then taught me to call that loyalty. You want me to sign so this calms down? I said. I want you to protect yourself. Those aren't always the same thing. His eyes went hard. Don't confuse my fear with cowardice. I stood, took my bowl to the sink, and kissed his cheek. I'll call you tomorrow. Leah. But I was already through the side door. Elena called again as soon as I reached my car. They moved the validation, she said without greeting. To when? Thursday night. That's impossible. Oriole needs observers. Grant says this is an internal pre-validation. Who's running it? Caleb. Caleb Dunn managed second shift finishing. He was competent, cheerful, and unable to say no to anyone with a title. Your quality director. Apparently, I'm too close to the original error. That's ridiculous. I'd enjoy that more if it weren't happening to me. Through the phone, I heard carts banging and someone calling for a mechanic. Did they change the seal procedure? I asked. New supplier, blue sequential locks with a different crimper. Grant had them couriered from Cincinnati. A new seal would keep my crescent mark from appearing again. It wouldn't correct the false movement history, but it would make any comparison look like I was relying on obsolete hardware. What about Marcus? I asked. Pulled off Oriole routes. Grant says he needs someone without preconceived concerns. Meaning someone who won't mention the maintenance bay. Meaning Derek volunteered. Derek Shaw could drive anything with wheels and considered documentation an insult to momentum. Elena lowered her voice. Grant called a supervisor's meeting. He said you removed proprietary records and disrupted today's client presentation after being terminated. I removed nothing. I know. Does Marcus? He knows what he saw. He's also 3 payments from owning his truck and scared Grant will find a reason to fire him. I leaned against the car door. Don't send me anything. I wasn't going to. Don't photograph records. Don't forward emails. Don't give him a reason to turn this into data theft. What do you want me to do? Your job. Record what happens where it belongs. If a test fails, don't sign it. If it passes, sign it. She was quiet. Easy advice from the parking lot, she said. The words landed because she meant them to. You're right. I'm sorry. No, you're right. A forklift horn sounded behind her. I have to go, she said. For what it's worth, half the plant thinks you threw us under a bus. The other half thinks Grant did. What do you think? I think the ironer keeps running while management has emotions. She hung up. On Wednesday morning, Mercer's outside counsel informed me that communication with employees regarding Oriole could violate my confidentiality obligations. 20 minutes later, my family group chat lit up with a message from Aunt Lorraine asking everyone to give Grant grace during this attack on the business. Richard replied with a thumbs up. Dad wrote nothing. By noon, 2 supervisors had removed me from their social media contacts. A route driver I had trained sent me a message that said, I hope you got what you wanted, then blocked me before I could ask what he thought that was. Valerie finally released my personal notebook after my attorney, who had found an opening when another consultation canceled, sent a preservation letter. Dale delivered it to my porch in a padded envelope. 3 pages had yellow tabs attached, marking notes Mercer considered potentially confidential. 1 tab marked my dentist appointment. Another marked a grocery list that included bleach, lentils, and the words, good mustard. The 3rd marked a page from the week before the pilot. G says bank requires signed OHA agreement before second draw. Wants full validation language even if Tuesday volume simulation rolls. Asked what minimum defensible looks like. Below it, I had written my answer. Defensible to whom? I photographed the page, sent it to my attorney, and put the notebook in a kitchen drawer. At 4:30, Celia emailed me directly. Mercer has advised that you will not participate in Thursday's internal run. Oriole's observed validation remains unscheduled. Please confirm whether you are available in an independent advisory capacity if appropriate terms can be established. I read it standing at my counter, where the folded visitor badge and red seal lay beside a stack of unopened mail. An independent role would give me a seat in the process. It would also let Grant tell every employee in the plant that I had gotten myself fired to sell my loyalty to the client. I typed 3 different answers and deleted each one. Then someone knocked. Marcus stood on the porch in his reflective work jacket, turning his truck keys around one finger. "I'm not giving you records," he said as soon as I opened the door. "Good. I'm not picking a side. Also good." He held up his phone. "Then tell me why the seal on the cart I drove Tuesday morning had the same number as one I photographed Monday night." My stomach tightened. "Why did you photograph it?" "Because the manifest said 47 and the cart said 17. I sent it to dispatch so they'd fix the paperwork." He put the phone back in his pocket. The picture's still in the company message thread, along with their answer telling me to move the cart and stop holding the dock. "Who answered?" "Derek." "Did you tell Grant?" "This morning. He said the photo proves there was a clerical discrepancy. It proves when the seal was where. That's what I thought. His keys stopped moving. They want me to drive the internal run tomorrow," he said. "Same dock, same model. Grant says if I'm committed to the expansion, I'll help get it right this time." "And if you don't?" He didn't say. He looked past me into the kitchen at the white badge wrapped around the red seal. "What would you do?" he asked. I thought of Elena's voice. Easy advice from the parking lot. "I'd drive it," I said, "and I'd make them put every instruction where it belongs." Marcus nodded once. Before he left, he glanced back at me. "You know new seals won't fix the scanner clock." "I know. He doesn't." The next afternoon, I accepted Celia's request with 3 conditions. Oriole's counsel would define my role, all technical questions would be submitted in writing, and I would receive no Mercer records except through authorized channels. "At 6:08, she replied. "Agreed." At 6:11, Grant called. I watched his name pulse across the screen until it stopped. Then he called again. On the 3rd call, I answered. "Are you working for Oriole now?" Grant asked. "Good evening to you too." "Are you?" I agreed to discuss an advisory role. "You agreed before speaking to me. I stopped reporting to you when you canceled my badge." His breath moved across the line. In the background, I heard the finishing floor buzzer, then the metallic clap of a press closing. "You cannot advise on a project built with Mercer's proprietary information." Oriole's counsel is defining the scope. How considerate of them. "They suggested it after you refused to include me. I refused to pay a former employee to interfere with my validation." "Then you shouldn't pay me." "That's cute." "No, Grant. It's a boundary." He went quiet. Grant hated the language of boundaries. It forced him to choose between crossing one openly and pretending he had never intended to. "Valerie will send a revised agreement," he said. 16 weeks instead of 12. The confirmation remains. The false statement remains. The clerical discrepancy did not affect the linen. You don't know that. Neither do you. That's why the validation wasn't complete. His voice dropped. "You are putting 93 jobs at risk over a sentence. You put the sentence there." He hung up. The revised agreement arrived at 6:24. 16 weeks of salary, 4 months of health coverage, and the same paragraph 7. I sent it to my attorney, put my phone face down, and made lentils. They burned while I stood at the sink trying to remember whether I had ever seen Grant apologize without attaching an explanation. At 11:38, Elena sent one message. They hit the number, nothing else. The following morning, Mercer issued Oriole a 5-page summary of the internal run. 96,400 pounds processed, all carts sealed and scanned, no route integrity exceptions. Grant had placed the throughput number in a blue box on the first page. The quality section occupied 3 lines. Routine variances were observed during startup and resolved within standard process controls. Final product met release criteria. Nisha forwarded the summary to me through Oriole's counsel with 2 questions. What were Mercer's standard release criteria, and did the report demonstrate them? I could answer the first from Oriole's approved vendor specification, surface pH within the agreed range, Residual alkalinity below threshold, no visible soil, correct moisture retention, and documented barrier separation. The second answer was shorter. No. The report contained no batch-level readings, no rewash percentage, no machine export, and no explanation of routine variances. A clean summary could describe a clean run. It could also describe the decision to summarize one. I wrote that and stopped. Then I added, absence of supporting data is not evidence of failure. It mattered that I say that. Anger made certainty feel cheap. Elena didn't answer my call until nearly noon. "I've been suspended," she said. I stepped away from my kitchen window. "For what?" "Insubordination." "What did you refuse?" "To sign the Friday quality sheet." "Why?" "They pushed line 2 to 158. The tunnel washer on line 2 ran 12 compartments, each with its own dwell time. At our normal mix, 148 pounds per minute was ambitious. 158 meant shortening something or feeding more weight into pockets designed for less. "What did Caleb change?" I asked. "Main wash stayed. Final rinse lost 40 seconds. "Who authorized it?" "Grant and Todd." Todd Mercer was Grant's father, Richard's younger brother, and our maintenance director. He could rebuild a gearbox from memory and treated wash chemistry as something salespeople invented to bother mechanics. "What happened to conductivity?" I asked. "Climbed after batch 22. Surface pH followed." "How many batches did you hold?" 6. The summary says final product met release criteria. They reran the 6 after the measured run ended, so the product met criteria after rewash. Yes. And they counted the original pounds as completed throughput. Yes. I closed my eyes. Same argument. New failure. "Did you enter the holds in the quality system?" "I entered them when they happened. Grant asked me to revise the times to when the rewash cleared." "And you refused." "I said, release time is release time." "What did he say?" "That I was letting my friendship with you compromise my judgment. The unfair part was that our friendship did affect her. She was under more scrutiny because she had called me. It didn't make her readings less real." "Did you send me anything?" I asked. "No." "Did you remove anything?" "No. Before they suspended me, Valerie told me to preserve the native export because of your attorney's letter. I saved it in the audit folder where we always save it." "Good. Then Grant told IT to lock me out. Don't try to get back in. I'm angry, not stupid." "I know." She was silent for a moment. "I did send the export to Pritchard," she said. "Pritchard Company was Mercer's outside accounting firm. They reviewed production support for the bank's equipment draws." "When?" "Before my access was cut. They requested the run support yesterday morning. I copied Oriole's designated auditor because the test summary listed them as an observer, even though they weren't there. That was a sharper move than I expected from Elena. It was also entirely within the audit request." "What did Valerie say?" "She closed her office door. You may need your own attorney." "With what money?" "I'll send you the association list." "You picked someone from a list?" Her automatic reply was very professional. Elena laughed once despite herself. "I have to go. Luis is taking me to lunch before I decide to drive back there and organize their chemical room correctly out of spite." After we hung up, I called Marcus. He answered with, "I drove exactly what the manifest said." "Did the scanner clock behave?" "It behaved after IT corrected the server offset at 7:40. The report says no root exceptions. There weren't any. Blue seals worked fine. His disappointment was obvious." "That's good," I said. "Is it?" "Yes, it means the correction worked. So Grant gets to say everything worked. He gets to say the root controls worked. Marcus considered that. You're very annoying when you're fair." "I've heard. They ran us hard. Derek clipped a bollard trying to clear Dock 2 in 6 minutes. Damage?" "Yellow paint on his bumper. Bollard won." "Bollards usually do." He laughed, then lowered his voice. "Caleb made me sign the manifest before quality released the last carts." "Did you?" I wrote, "Transport complete, quality release pending above my name. A small, clean pleasure moved through me. Good, I said. Learned from somebody annoying. That afternoon, Oriole requested the batch-level support. Mercer's counsel objected that the Thursday run had been internal and outside the formal validation protocol. Pritchard's audit manager requested the same records under the financing agreement. By evening, the observed test was scheduled for Monday. Grant did not call me again. Instead, he worked through procedures. Oriole's counsel sent a site access agreement limiting me to the conference room, observation corridor, and loading dock. I could ask questions only through Nisha. I could not direct Mercer employees. I could not copy records, photograph screens, or enter production areas. At the bottom, Mercer had added a line requiring me to wear a visitor badge at all times. Monday morning, Dale met me in reception with the sign-in tablet. "Grant wants me to escort you," he said. "Do I look fast?" "You look like trouble in sensible shoes." That's the nicest thing anyone here has said to me all week. He printed the badge, Leah Mercer, Oriole Consultant. This time, I stuck it over the empty place where the company logo used to be. The blouse was mine. Mercer had requested the embroidered one back. As Dale led me toward the observation corridor, people found reasons not to look at me. A folder became fascinating in Valerie's hands. Caleb spoke urgently into a radio that wasn't transmitting. One of the ironer operators gave me the smallest possible nod. Grant waited beside line 2 in a gray suit and hearing protection. "You are not authorized beyond the yellow floor line," he said. I read the agreement. "All questions go through Dr. Patel." I read that too. "And you are not to communicate with Elena or Marcus during the run." "Elena isn't here." "That isn't your concern." Nisha stepped between us with a clipboard. "It's mine." "Why is your quality director absent?" "Personnel matter." "Who has release authority?" "Caleb Dunn." Caleb looked as if someone had informed him of this recently. The run began at 6. Soil sort fed the tunnel in planned sequence. Sheets, gowns, towels, reusable underpads. Oriole's observer logged pocket weights. Pritchard's audit manager sat behind a laptop comparing timestamps. Marcus moved sealed carts from finishing to dispatch and wrote on every manifest with exaggerated care. For 3 hours, the numbers held. Line speed stayed at 148. Final rinse conductivity remained stable. The blue seals scanned cleanly. Grant walked the corridor with his hands behind his back, answering questions before Nisha finished asking them. At 9:15, a steam valve began sticking on line 1. Todd shut the line down. Wet work backed into soil sort. Grant conferred with Caleb, then increased line 2 to 154. Nisha looked at me. I said nothing. Questions went through her, but observations belonged to whoever was watching. At 154, the rinse reading edged upward. Grant reduced the chemical feed. The reading leveled. At 10:20, the stalled line still wasn't running. Carts crowded the finishing lane. Oriole's modeled Tuesday pickup window was approaching, and 14,000 pounds remained. Grant moved line 2 to 158. The extraction cycle changed pitch. Even behind the glass, I could hear the machine working harder. Nisha wrote down the time. Batch 19 cleared. Batch 20. 21. At batch 22, the conductivity reading crossed the yellow limit. Caleb looked at Grant. Grant pointed toward the next cart. Caleb released it to finishing. Nisha tapped the glass with her pen. Hold batch 22. Grant pressed the intercom. Reading is transient. Continue monitoring. Batch 23 crossed higher. Hold 22 and 23, Nisha said. Grant removed his hearing protection. Your agreement grants observation, not operational direction. Your vendor specification grants Oriole rejection authority over non-conforming product. The surface test hasn't been completed. Caleb brought the test strip from the finishing table. Its color sat 1 block beyond the acceptable range. Grant stared at it. Then he looked through the glass at me. I kept my hands flat on the counter. By midnight, 7 batches were on hold and the modeled pickup window had closed. The route controls had worked. The seals had worked. Marcus's manifests matched the scanner clock to the minute. The plant had still failed the run. In the boardroom upstairs, Grant presented the failure as a steam valve event, unrelated to Oriole readiness. Todd agreed the valve could be rebuilt by morning. Caleb said rewash would clear the held batches within 2 hours. Pritchard's audit manager turned his laptop toward the table. The prior internal run shows the same alkalinity pattern without a steam interruption, he said. Grant's face emptied. Elena's native export filled the screen. 6 held batches, 6 later rewashed. Original pounds included in the reported throughput. Celia had joined by video. Her image remained still for several seconds. "Mr. Mercer," she said, "we need to discuss whether the system failed twice or whether your reporting did." Grant looked at me instead of the screen. This company operated safely for 38 years before Leah decided every correction was a scandal. I felt every person at the table waiting for my answer. "The corrections are the system," I said. "Hiding them is the failure." Celia closed the contract folder on her desk. Oriole is pausing negotiations pending a full capacity and reporting review. Grant pushed back from the table. His phone began vibrating. He looked at the name, then silenced it. A second phone rang in Todd's pocket. He answered, listened, and handed it to Grant. "It's Richard," he said. Grant took the phone. His father's voice carried clearly enough for all of us to hear. "The bank called me." Grant held the phone away from his ear. "What did they say?" Todd asked. Grant stared at the dark boardroom window. Our reflections floated over the plant lights below. 6 tired adults, 1 paused contract, and a table full of numbers that had finally stopped cooperating with him. Richard's voice crackled from the phone. They froze the second draw. Pritchard flagged the throughput report. "We haven't submitted a draw against this run," Grant said. "They're reviewing the first one." "On what basis?" "The forecast depended on Oriole signing this week. The contract is paused, not lost." "Then unpause it." Celia was still visible on the monitor. Grant noticed and lowered the phone. "I'll call you back." "Don't you hang up on—" Grant ended the call. Todd sat heavily beside him. Grease from the steam valve had worked into the creases of his hands. "The equipment manufacturer expects the next payment Friday." "I know. Do you?" Grant's head turned. "I know every payment." For a second, they looked less like father and son than 2 men trapped on opposite sides of the same invoice. Celia spoke from the screen. "We'll reconvene after the review team has the supporting records." "Celia," Grant said, "the delayed volume cleared quality. Oriole received proof tonight that our correction controls work. I received proof that your summary omitted the need for correction. The contract measures delivered quality. It also measures dependable capacity. We can meet it. Then the records will show that." Her image disappeared. Grant closed the laptop with more care than I expected. "You should go," he said to me. "My escort is waiting." Of course he is. Dale stood outside the glass with my coat over one arm. When I joined him, he handed it to me and looked through the wall at Grant. "He going to be okay?" he asked. "I don't know." Dale nodded toward my visitor badge. "You can keep that one. I don't want to do the paperwork." I almost smiled. In the parking lot, Marcus was sitting on the hood of his truck with 2 vending machine coffees. He offered me one. "What is it?" I asked. "Brown." I took it. The sky had the flat black color that came before freezing rain. Inside the plant, the loading crews were reprocessing the held batches. Work did not stop just because management had run out of language. "Did we lose them?" Marcus asked. "I don't know." "Everybody's asking. Tell them the contract is under review. They'll hear that as yes. Then tell them I said I don't know." He blew across his coffee. "Half the second shift thinks you're coming back to run the plant." "I'm not." "You answered very fast." "I've had practice." He looked toward the loading dock. "Caleb apologized about the manifest." "For asking you to sign early? For pretending he didn't know why it mattered? That's something. Is Elena coming back?" "That isn't my decision." You keep saying that. Because everyone keeps offering me decisions that belong to Grant. Marcus studied me over the paper rim. Maybe they don't belong to him anymore. My attorney called at 8 the next morning. Mercer had withdrawn the 16-week offer and replaced it with the original 12 weeks, citing my adversarial consulting activity. Can they do that? I asked. They can offer you nothing if they'd like. That seems unfriendly. It's rarely a friendly document. She advised me to wait. The confirmation clause was now more dangerous to Mercer than to me because the audit records contradicted it. My termination timing, preservation request, and Grant's revisions to the deck gave us leverage, but litigation would be slow and expensive. How slow? Think in seasons. I looked at the kitchen drawer containing my notebook. And expensive? Think in appliances. My refrigerator makes a clicking sound. Then let's negotiate. Pritchard's review took 9 days. They interviewed Caleb, Marcus, Elena, Todd, Valerie, and me. They compared seal scans with weigh tickets, wash chemistry with pocket weights, and the internal run summary with the native machine export. They found no grand scheme, only a chain of decisions that had each made the next decision easier. An aggressive forecast, a compressed test schedule, pressure to clear carts, a moved seal, rewash counted as first pass capacity, and language polished until correction looked like completion. Valerie produced the revision history for the client deck. My phrase, corrective validation pending, had been removed from slide 31 at 10:14, the night before my termination. Grant had replaced it with all validation criteria met. At 10:19, I had emailed him. I cannot present this as written. At 10:23, he had replied, then do not plan on presenting. Dale's access report showed my badge canceled at 9:12 the next morning. Ordinary records had a rude way of remembering what powerful people preferred to call misunderstanding. Grant responded with his own evidence. He produced emails where I had described him as rushing, notes where I challenged the financing assumptions, and a message to Elena saying sales had promised a Tuesday miracle. He argued that I had entered the pilot expecting failure and interpreted every correctable deviation as proof. Some of it embarrassed me. In one interview, Pritchard's manager asked whether I respected Grant's judgment. Sometimes, I said. Did you trust him? I thought about the steam line failure, Grant driving through ice, the replacement slide, and my badge flashing red. Not with the conclusion he needed in order to reach the next payment. That sentence appeared in the review. So did Grant's answer when they asked whether he would make the same reporting decision again. I would provide more supporting detail, he said. Not no. The bank gave Mercer a choice. Reduce the equipment order and repay part of the first draw, or bring operational reporting under someone other than Grant before financing continued. Richard's personal guarantee remained attached until the revised loan closed. Oriole offered a choice too. They would proceed with 58% of the planned launch volume. An independent textile quality firm would validate the line quarterly for the first year. Expansion would depend on first pass capacity, not total pounds after rewash. Oriole could move volume elsewhere if Mercer missed 2 consecutive release windows. It was a smaller contract. It was also enough to keep the existing plant staffed while the family renegotiated the equipment purchase. Grant called it an insult. Todd called it oxygen. The discussion moved to Dad's kitchen because Richard refused to enter the plant while the bank review was open. By the time I arrived, Grant, Todd, Richard, and Dad were seated around the table. Aunt Lorraine had left a pan of baked pasta on the stove, with a note telling them to eat before saying things that cannot be put back. No one had touched it. Richard looked 10 years older than he had at Christmas. He tapped Oriole's revised term sheet. They want Leah back as transition lead. They want her as their advisor, Grant said. That's different. It's more expensive for us, Richard said. They're paying me, I said. Grant looked up. You accepted? I accepted a permanent position with Oriole this morning. Regional supplier transitions. I start after this contract is resolved. Dad's eyes moved to me. Permanent? Yes. You didn't tell me. I'm telling you. Grant laughed under his breath. There it is. What? You get the client, the title, and a clean exit. The rest of us get a reduced contract and a bank monitor. Todd shifted in his chair. We get a contract. We get half of what I built the expansion around. You built around pounds we can't process, Richard said. We can process them with the new line. The line we can't finish paying for without the pounds, Todd said. Grant pushed away from the table. That's how expansion works. You commit before every condition is comfortable. All three of you did that for 38 years, and now you're acting like I invented risk. Dad folded his hands. Risk isn't the same as reporting a failed test as passed. The carts were corrected. After the window. The linen was clean. After rewash. People still have jobs. His voice cracked on the last word. The room changed. Grant looked furious that it had happened. He turned toward the sink, shoulders rigid beneath his shirt. I know their names, he said. I know who needs overtime and who can't work nights and who's one missed shift from losing a car. I sat with the bank because none of you wanted to. I signed the equipment order because everybody agreed we were dying slowly. Then Leah finds 3 seals, Oriole gets nervous, and suddenly I'm the disease. I reached into my purse and took out the red seal. The first white visitor badge was still folded around it, its adhesive gone gray along the edges. I peeled the badge away and placed the seal on the table. You aren't the disease, I said. You're the person who knew exactly how scared everyone was and used it to make disagreement feel disloyal. His eyes settled on the seal. You chose strangers over this family. Oriole isn't the one that locked me outside a room. You were going to ruin the signing. I was going to change 4 words on one slide. You knew what those words would do. Yes, they would have bought us time before the client committed its hospitals to capacity we didn't have. They would have killed the financing. Then the financing was already in trouble. Grant looked at Dad. You taught her that. Dad picked up the seal. He turned it over once, then again. His thumb found the pale crescent near the locking head. I taught both of you, he said. Grant's face tightened. Dad set the seal between them. I also taught you that a clean cart is a promise made by people the customer never sees. I should have remembered that before I asked Leah to help you get through the meeting. It was the closest my father came to an apology when other people were present. Then he looked at me. I didn't believe you fast enough. The directness hurt more. I nodded because speaking would have made me cry, and I was tired of having my tears entered into evidence. Richard opened the term sheet again. The bank wants operational control reassigned. Oriole wants Elena reinstated with release authority. We need an answer today. Grant sat down. Todd spoke quietly. Stay in sales. Grant stared at him. You're good at it, Todd said. Better than anybody we've had. Bring in work we can actually run. Let someone else certify it. You're asking me to accept a demotion in my own company. I'm asking you to stay. Grant looked around the table, searching for a different offer. There wasn't one. He signed the revised governance agreement at 4:17 that afternoon. Elena returned as quality director with authority to stop production without sales approval. Caleb remained on second shift after requesting additional quality training. Marcus became dispatch supervisor when the position opened under Oriole's reduced launch plan. Grant kept his vice president title for client development, but every proposal required capacity approval from operations and quality before he could quote a launch date. My attorney negotiated 20 weeks of salary, 6 months of health coverage, payment of my unused vacation, and a neutral employment reference. Paragraph 7 disappeared. Mercer paid Elena for her suspension and removed the warning from her file. Grant signed my agreement but did not speak to me for 5 weeks. We saw each other at the first quarterly validation. The independent firm had tagged every instrument, checked every recipe, and made Todd explain the steam valve maintenance schedule in such detail that he developed a grudging affection for the auditor. Oriole's launch volume cleared first-pass quality with 11 minutes left in the pickup window. On the loading floor, Elena checked the final manifest while Marcus backed the truck into Dock 2. Dale stood by the door, drinking something from my chipped blue mug. "You stole that," I told him. "Abandoned property." "Elena gave it to me." "She gave me permission." Elena didn't look up from the manifest. Quality has broad authority now. Across the dock, Grant finished a conversation with Oriole's facilities director. He had won Mercer an additional outpatient clinic route, small enough for the existing plant and profitable enough to matter. As he passed me, he paused. "The volume forecast was mine," he said. "The clinic route." "I know. Quality approved it. I know that too." He nodded toward the truck. "Pickup windows tight. Marcus built in 9 minutes. 11 would be better. Put it in writing." For half a second, the old anger flashed. Then his mouth moved at one corner. "Still annoying. I'm permanent now." He walked away before I could decide whether that counted as peace. Marcus closed the truck doors. Elena handed me the final seal for the last clean cart, red again now that Mercer had returned to its regular supplier. I crimped it and turned it over. A perfect circle. My father's old habit moved through my fingers, but the seal no longer felt like a warning or a piece of evidence. It was simply the last thing checked before a promise left the building. I let the cart go.